So thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. It's such a huge honor to finally meet you in person. We've heard so many nice things about you, especially in the law sector. So maybe you can start by introducing yourself to those Kenyans who might not know who you are.
It's my pleasure featuring in this interview. My name is Lukwago Erias. Currently I'm the Lord Mayor of Kampala. I was first elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2016, 2021. So I'm in my third term through adult suffrage. But previously, I served as a member of parliament for Kampala Central. And while in parliament, I was the shadow minister for justice and constitutional affairs and also attorney general in parliament.
Wow.
Sure.
That's a very big post. So maybe you can tell us the secret to your success, because it is not easy to find a man who has been able to hold, so many positions in a parliament. Because you see, many people maybe have one post and then they are fired and they move on to other. It means that you are a very good leader.
Well, it's by the grace of God, and I owe it to the Almighty of whatever I have managed to achieve in my life. And of course, the trust of the people which I have enjoyed over the years. The people's will has been so much paramount. The people's will has been paramount in all this. And I've always been cautious about the interests of the people, the will of the people, and to always be on the side of the people. I'm always, in my leadership, I'm guided by certain principles, which I do not compromise at all. And the vision I espouse rhymes or resonates very well with the will and wishes of the people of Kampala and Ugandans at large. I think that's the reason I've managed to attain some mileage.
Mr. Erias,
yes.
Maybe to ask you a question, what does it take to be a mayor in Kampala or in Uganda?
Oh, a couple of things. But one, you've got to have a vision that speaks to the will of the people, that speaks to the interests of the people. And you have to be charismatic, you have to be resilient, you have to be steadfast. And also be ready to navigate the murky waters, because when you are running the city, it's the capital city, and you are from the opposition, you must understand the terrain you are confronted with, the environment, the political environment you have to deal with. In all the elections you have gone through, it has not been a walk in the park. No, it has been a tough call. It's been a nightmare for me to go through those 3 election cycles of the Lord Mayor and the first one of the MP, Member of Parliament for Kampala Central. For the record, the first time I took a shot at the position of Lord Mayor in 2011, the state had decided to rig massively, and they had stuffed all the ballot boxes, they had done all sorts of crazy things to rig the vote. We put up a spirited fight with my team, the people we had mobilized, and Kampala, and said, no way. We had to force the election to be cancelled midway, by around midday. We forced the regime to cancel the election, and we had a rerun, which I had to, I won. So every election we go through, once you are in opposition, you are tussling it out with the state machinery. It's not about the individual candidate sponsored by the ruling party. No, it's about the state might, which comes down on you, and you have to resist it resiliently and valiantly. So basically that's what it is. That's the political terrain there. So it's not that easy. And even when you are in office, at one time they attempted to impeach me. They brought some judges there and constituted a tribunal, fabricated cases against me, purported to conduct investigation. And then they convicted me and said I should be removed from office. They paid the councillors to vote me out. Indeed, the majority of the councillors who had been compromised voted me out. But I had to put up a spirited fight. It was a pushback. The masses rallied behind me. I went to court. We defeated them. So it has not been easy. As we speak right now, Mr. Museveni has now resorted to other maneuvers to whittle down the powers of the Lord Mayor by bringing proxies from the central government. He has brought 2 ministers to just overshadow or eclipse the Lord Mayor. 2 ministers. He has brought what they call resident state commissioners. There are 12 resident commissioners in Kampala. 12. Can imagine. All appointed by General Kaguta Museveni to do his politics in Kampala. Even the management team and all these other individuals, they are all appointed by the president. So they try as much as possible to whittle down the influence and the authority of the Lord Mayor by tinkering with the law, manipulating the laws and all those structural systems, arrangements. So basically that's what Museveni is all about. That is his game plan. But the people of Kampala have said no. They have resisted all those maneuvers. And that's the reason I am around.
While we were at the launching of PLP party, that is Madakaroa's party, People Liberation Party, you say that Kampala or Uganda in general doesn't have any gold mining place, or it does not have any place that they do mine gold, but the largest exportation of
second largest
in
export.
Africa. Export.
Yes.
It's gold. Can you provide with facts, maybe, or tell us?
This is on record.
How does it happen and where does they?
It's on record, and it is quite a mind-boggling issue. Uganda as a country, we do not have well-known established gold mines. Of course, there are some small quarries here and there where they do some little fishing of gold here and there from Karamoja and some parts of Mubende there in the Buganda region. But by and large, we do not have gold mines in Uganda. But one of the biggest forex earners in Uganda is gold. DRC took us to the International Court of Justice and they won a case against us for invading Congo and looting their wealth, timber and gold and all those other minerals. We were convicted. Okay, we were defeated at ICJ. Now, we have to pay through the nose colossal sums of monies. The ICJ condemned us to damages, colossal sums of monies we have to pay to DRC on account of looting, the gold scandals we have had. Just rolling the wheels back to the 60s, 1966, we had that gold scandal, which caused the political turmoil, or sparked off political turmoil in Uganda. Now, Mr. Museveni is rewinding the clock back to those days. We have invaded the Congo, as a matter of fact. Mr. Museveni and the team are supporting M23. They have not denied this fact. And the irony is, you'll find now over hundreds. You'll find hundreds of refugees in Uganda from DRC. Of course, we have over 1.4 million refugees, but majority now are from DRC. It's an irony, it's paradoxical that a country which is endowed with all those minerals, they are rooted by Uganda, and then we purport to offer sanctuary for the people who are deprived of their own wealth. So this is why I'm calling it a paradox. So it's the reason again the people of DRC had to invade our embassy in Kinshasa. They ransacked everything, they chased away our staff, and now the High Commission of Uganda in Kinshasa is closed because they believe that all the problems they are facing emanate from Uganda and Rwanda. That is their conviction. So, and it is almost the same story with Kenya here during the Maandamano activities here. The Gen Zs stormed our embassy here, torched it, literally. They torched it in Kenya here. Because they attributed, they are convinced in their own judgment that Uganda is responsible partially for the crisis they are contending with here in Kenya. They attribute it partially to Uganda. That's how problematic Uganda has been within the region. That all these the political instability within the Great Lakes region largely emanates from Uganda. We are responsible as a country for the political chaos, the turmoil, anarchy within the East African region. Every country is now within the region. Every country is accusing Uganda. So that is the situation.
And also, our Gen Z have been one of the people who have been fighting for this country as far as operation is concerned. In Uganda, do you have the Gen Zs, and maybe might you give them a word to be like Kenyan Gen Zs who come out whenever there is some conflict or whenever the government is doing against for the will of the people?
Well, I must say the Gen Zs here have been emboldened and they are civically competent. Allow me to rephrase it. Yes, the Gen Zs here in Kenya have demonstrated that they have whatever it takes, that resolve to take on the powers that be the regime here and regain or reclaim their country, control of their country. They want to be in charge of their destiny, to reclaim their future, to regain control of the state structure, the state apparatus. And they have been successful to a greater extent. Back home in Uganda, our youth, they draw a lot of inspiration from the Gen Zs here, quite a lot. From their charisma, their steadfastness, their resolve, their commitment, their tenacity, and all that you can talk about. It's been a source of inspiration for our Gen Zs there. The problem in Uganda is the repression is too much. You know, unlike Kenya, Uganda is a military state. It's a military state. It's about bourgeois generals who are in charge of the state apparatus, the state structure. So the degree of suppression and repression is high in Uganda. The intensity is high compared to Kenya here. So our youth do not have that latitude of organizing for a pushback. Yet in Kenya here, youth can meet through various civil society organizations, through NGOs, through different platforms. They can always meet, organize, mobilize resources, coordinate, and take on the regime. Take the bull by the take the bull by the horns. That has been the case here with Kenya. Uganda, the persecution, the harassment, the kind of repression, so much. And it makes it difficult for youth there to do the coordination and organization to be able to push back. That is the critical challenge first in Uganda.
So you were voted one of Africa's top politicians last year on our platform. So there are so many people who look up to you. So for those who wish to venture into politics and be like you one day, like us here, what message, what can you advise us?
What is important is to have a vision and a philosophy. You see, there are so many politicians who I think have had a shot at elective politics and they have not succeeded. And there are those who have the way managed to get elective positions and abuse authority. So what is critical and important is to remain focused on the vision, on the philosophy and the values that you really espouse, you hold dear to yourself, which speak to the interests of the people. In a nutshell, you've always got to do an introspection, to always look over your shoulders and ask yourself, do I have the people behind me? Whose interests do I represent? Do I have the mandate of the people in whatever I do? That's a fundamental question you should always ask yourself. In everything you do and undertake in that particular direction, you need to ask yourself that fundamental question. Do I have the people's mandate? Whose interests am I serving? Who is what I'm doing in tandem or in sync with the will of the people? What I am embarking on, is it in sync with the will of the people? Many politicians fail that test. They go into self-aggrandizement. They become so selfish. Greed or eclipses whatever vision they may be having, and in the end they lose direction. So all the years I've been in politics, I've been guided by a particular philosophy, and I'm not about to waver on that. And there are values that I hold dear and I never compromise on the same. I think that has been the secret behind the milestones that I've registered along the way. I think that explains the successes I've registered, however humble they may be. But at least I know whatever I'm doing, I'm driven by that desire to achieve a particular goal which resonates with the aspirations of the people.
Sir, do you think it was constitutionally right for the government of Kenya to collaborate with the government of Uganda to come and arrest Mr. Besigye?
You see,
in the country?
Two things here. One, we have extradition laws and other international instruments and protocols that we have assented to as a sister countries. We have the Extradition Act of Kenya and Extradition Act of Uganda. Likewise, we have a treaty, East African Treaty. These instruments provide for a mechanism of exchange of fugitives. You can call them fugitive criminals. In this case of Dr. Kizza Besigye, those legal instruments were never respected. There was no extradition. We are talking about rendition, illegal repatriation or transfer of Dr. Besigye back to Uganda. He was never extradited. He was never deported. Deportation can only happen if one enters Kenya illegally, or having entered here legally, you commit a crime here. And you have to be subjected to a due process if you are to be deported or extradited. And the due process involves court action, where the government here has to seek for a warrant. The Kenyan government, upon a request from the receiving country, the country of origin, if at the instance of the country of origin, the Kenyan authorities here would arrest Dr. Besigye, take him to the courts of law. They would be the ones to effect arrest and take him to the courts of law. And from there, they would secure what we call an extradition warrant. It's a court order that directs that so and so be repatriated, and he goes back to the country to face crimes. But that is if you were fugitive. It's on record Dr. Besigye entered here legally through the immigration protocols at the airport here, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. He was cleared by the immigration authorities. There was no complaint about his movement from Uganda to Kenya. Even the issue of having been found in possession of firearms illegally, it should have been the Kenyan government to complain, because if he was found in a meeting at Riverside in possession of firearms, that offends the laws of Kenya. It should have been the country, this Kenyan government, should have been the Kenyan government to cause his arrest, prosecution, and possibly transfer or deportation, rather extradition. That did not happen. So what we have being treated to is a transgression, nothing else but travesty, violation of the Kenyan constitution, violation of the extradition laws, violation of the East African Treaty and other international instruments. And that's why we are holding the Kenyan government accountable in this as accomplices, because they are complicit in this. They facilitated an illegality. The Kenyan government ought to have defended its territorial integrity. The security elements who crossed over the border from Uganda to come and effect the arrest at Riverside did that illegally, because they have no power or authority of arrest in Kenya here. They could not effect a lawful arrest here. There was no way they could be allowed to do this. It's an affront to the territorial integrity of Kenya. And this is why we are saying, why is it that the government of Kenya is quiet about this? And they have not even come out to put the government of Uganda on notice that they are about to drag us to the international court for violating their territorial integrity. That means they are complicit in this. And they have not even issued a statement condemning the act, or in any way asking the government of Uganda to apologize for whatever they did here, attacking the territorial integrity of Kenya. What we heard when we are in court, the government of Uganda tried to justify the act of transferring Dr. Besigye on some mysterious grounds that there is an agreement, a mutual agreement between the government of Uganda and Kenya to exchange political prisoners, whom they call dissidents. That under that agreement, they mutually, undertook to send back what they call political dissidents, that there should be reciprocity on either side of the border when it comes to exchange of political prisoners. But that secret agreement is a narrative, because it's not brought within the framework of the East African Treaty, the international law, and it's also a negation of the spirit and letter of the extradition laws of both countries, if at all it exists, because they have not laid it on table. It's the reason I asked the members of Parliament here of Kenya, they should put this government to task to also explain whether actually that agreement exists, and they ask them to lay it on table of Parliament there. Should ask them, please lay it on table if indeed it is there. It can't be a secret treaty, a secret agreement that is an accord they executed clandestinely, and then they are implementing it. So these are transgressions and violations which we are challenging at the ICJ, the East African Court of Justice, PALU, Pan-African Lawyers Union, ICJ Kenya here, Senior Counsel Martha Karua, and a couple of other stakeholders. We are pursuing these processes jointly, of course, dragging this government of Kenya to the East African Court of Justice. We have dragged them to the East African Court of Justice, the Kenyan government and Uganda government, for the collusion they made to violate Dr. Besigye's rights.
Okay, so apart from all these kind of political crises in Uganda, what is one thing that you are proud of being a Ugandan back in your land?
Maybe it's the natural environment, which is God-given. If you are talking about Uganda being the Pearl of Africa, probably yes, but it has been devastated by the successive regimes we have had, the worst being the Museveni 40-year rule, because they have ravaged, literally ravaged each and everything we are endowed with. God gave us, or which were bequeathed to us by our forefathers. They have ravaged it. So that's the only thing we are left with, we are proud of, that we have those, that serene environment, the lush green there, the weather is good, and also the water bodies we have, the fertile soils and whatnot. Only that. The rest, nothing. What is it that we can be proud of? What is it? With that image we have as aggressors. Within the region, we are perceived as aggressors. Muhoozi talked of invading Kenya. Now we have invaded, at one time we invaded Rwanda, we have invaded the DRC, we invaded the Southeast Sudan. We are aggressors. And then we purport to be, we purport to be good Samaritans who are hosting refugees. It's ironical. So, just tell me one thing you think I should be proud of.
Many Kenyans put President Ruto being as a youngster, or maybe as someone who aspires, who as you see, his mentor to be Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, of what has been happening in our country. Do you really think by observing President William Ruto is doing exactly what President Yoweri Museveni has done all the years, and maybe at some point he might end up becoming like Yoweri Museveni?
It's very unfortunate that William Ruto, His Excellency, who enjoyed the goodwill of Kenyans all those years, even when he faced the ICC charges together with President Uhuru. The Kenyans stood by Ruto and said, no way. He ran a very popular campaign and won. Yes, the margin was very narrow, I think 200,000 votes. But he enjoyed the will of the people. I think it is reasonable to take the direction of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who assumed the power by the barrel of the gun. I'm sure if you got an AK-47 and gave it to His Excellency Ruto and asked him to pull the trigger, he will disappoint you. I'm sure he doesn't know. He cannot pull a trigger. He's not a gunman. His Excellency Ruto, for all intents and purposes, with all due respect, is not a gunman. Now, he is being mentored, has no DNA of democracy and the rule of law. Right from childhood, he's been belligerent. He talks, you can read his autobiography. Way back when he was still in secondary school, going to Frelimo, fighting in Mozambique, going to Tanzania, fighting Idi Amin, coming up with Fronasa. Then in the 80s with UNRF. Then he goes into Bush War, a 5-year guerrilla war, and then every now and again you see him brandishing the gun. Every now and again he's ruling by the gun. It's very, very absurd to see a man who moved the ladder. I mean, it's very, very absurd. I'm sorry. It's very, very absurd to see a man like the Honorable Ruto, His Excellency Ruto, who assumed power through the will of the people, popular vote, taking that trajectory of Yoweri Kaguta. Because now he's his mentor. Even at his inauguration, he didn't mince words. He invited Mr. Museveni to grace the occasion, and then in his speech, His Excellency Ruto said, this is our mentor here. They are treating him as the big brother. So he's taking Kenya down the drain. And whatever is happening here, I'm telling you seriously, it's a recipe for chaos here. Because now, what we have gone through all these years, it's like Kenya is about to also take the same direction of civil war, insurrection. They are deadly. So painful. So that is it. It's so painful that Ruto has chosen to take that deadly and devastating direction. So painful.
So far you've had a stellar career, so maybe you can share with us what would you like your legacy to be?
Yes.
So far you've had a stellar career, a very phenomenal career, and you're also very humble in person, which is so inspiring, because so I wanted to ask what would you like your legacy to be?
You see, one's legacy is defined by the challenges you are confronted with and how you navigate the same, how you deal with the same. So, for me, I stand by rule of law. Back home, my middle name is rule of law. It's not that I use it as a slogan, a political gimmick. That's a sloganeering. Nothing. I live it. It's something I've committed to myself. All my life since school days, been fighting for rule of law. The kind of bastardization of politics, which we have fought resolutely and valiantly, is what is defining who we are, who I am. Who I am is defined by the politics we are dealing with. And I think that's what is going to define my legacy. It's just like when you talk about the Martin Luther King Jr., you talk about the Mandelas, Mahatma Gandhis. It's the challenges of the day they confronted that defined their towering legacy, from which we draw inspiration. So, it's all about that.
So,
that's
for your time.
Thank you.
We hope to see you one day, maybe as the president of Uganda or something else, big in Africa, because we have seen you have the potential.
God willing.
Yeah.
Wait, I want to say something.
Thank you.